most of you have seen me walking with two instruments, two tools. What are these tools? What are these instruments? And why do I have them with me on stage, on a podium at NJ Dawah in 2023? There's a simple answer, and there is a perplexing, complex, complicated answer. Hopefully, I'll do my best to give you a bit of both. The simple answer is that I was requested and I was asked by someone very dear to me, please, Mufti, when you do your speech this year, 2023, at NJ Dawah about the heroes of Islam, please, pretty please, bring one or two of your swords with you, please. I said, no, it may scare some people off, or somebody may get the wrong idea, or somebody may think or feel that we're promoting killing or this or that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No, Mufti, trust me, just do it. Trust me on this one. Just do it. Everybody's going to love it. Everybody's going to like it. You'll be able to, wiggle your way out of any problems, so on and so forth. So, Bismillah. So, Bidnillahi ta'ala, I'm going to show you these two swords, and I'm going to give you a very, very brief, hopefully simple background and explanation on these swords and why I'm carrying them and why I like them, why I love them. Many people who attend my Jumu'ah or who watch my Jumu'ah online, they say, Mufti, why are you carrying a sword? And many other people, to be honest and fair, when they see me, they give me a bear hug. You know what a bear hug is? It's a really, really strong hug when somebody's squeezing the life out of you. It's, I love you, man. Your swords are cool. Keep doing it. Little kids, and Allah knows I exaggerate not. Little kids walk up to me, hey, you carry a sword. Your sword is nice. I like it. I love it. So subhanAllah, it's interesting how Allah Azza wa Jal makes people so differently. Their minds and their hearts. And how Allah Azza wa Jal varies between sight and perception. One person loves me for holding the sword. He thinks it's a good idea, a great idea. And another person says, no, you can't do that. You shouldn't have the sword. You're going to misrepresent Islam. People are going to think you're this, etc., etc., etc. Rather, and Allah knows that I'm not lying and I'm not exaggerating, I've had non-Muslims, kuffar, non-Muslims, walk up to me and say, hey, man, that's cool. Is that a real sword? Can I see it? Can I touch it? Can I hold it? So on and so forth. So therefore, why do we love swords, and why are swords so romanticized in Islam and outside of Islam? Khalid ibn al-Walid radiallahu anhu was called what? What nickname did Allah give him? Did the messenger give him? Did he call him the spear of Allah? Rumhullah? He didn't call him the axe of Allah, the pole arm of Allah. He didn't call him the bow of Allah, the arrow of Allah. But he called him Sayfullah al-Maslul, Allah's unsheathed sword. So the sword among all tools, instruments, and weapons has a very special place. All right. So the first of these two swords, as you can see, I've had it for some years. This was a gift. A very close friend of mine gifted me this sword. And it's a very simple sword. It's a very basic sword. But many of the best things in life are very simple and basic. Many of the best things in life are the simplest things in life. So this type of sword, briefly, is a Japanese sword. And it is a single-handed, a double-handed sword. Meaning it's meant to be held and wielded with two hands and not one. So there's no shield on the other hand. There's no other thing that's meant for two hands. And this sword is called a cane sword, a cane sword. Why is it called a cane sword? Because it's half sword and half cane. Like a cane that someone uses to walk if they're ill, if they're limping, if they're injured, so on and so forth. But it's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. So the general name of this sword is a cane sword. And if you wanted a specific name, then you would call it a katana. A katana. And this sword, it represents many things that we as Muslims should be aware of. And that is the merging of two worlds, the fading of one and the rising of another. Holding on to antiquity along with the eventual necessary change towards the modern progressive world. So we have ancient Japan, old Japan, new Japan. There were different classes of people in ancient Japan. There were artisans, there were merchants, there were entertainers, there were doctors, there were healers, there were performers, and of course there was a class known as the warrior class, the samurai. And the samurai were privileged people. They were privileged. And their society and their laws and their customs and their cultures, etc., it all came to an abrupt and violent end. And that was in the Meiji Restoration, when Japan wanted to become modern and mechanized and westernized. China was conquered, colonized. Other parts in the Far East and Asia were conquered, were colonized. And Japan, it remained as a hermit kingdom. It remained extremely xenophobic and extremely distrustful of the Western barbarians. We don't wish to trade with you. We don't want anything from you. We don't want you to dock your ships in our ports. Please go away. We've seen what you've done to China. We've seen what you've done to Cambodia, Vietnam. We don't want anything from you. And obviously, Great Britain, France, Portugal, the United States as a newcomer, they gave them an ultimatum. They said, you open your ports or we blow them open with our cannons on our warships. You choose. So there were many Japanese people who said, keep these people at bay, keep the barbarians away. And there were others who said, rather, these barbarians, they may be barbarians, that's what they called them, they have something to offer us. They have something that we can learn from them. And it can benefit us and it can benefit our society, let alone look outside the castle walls. You see those ships? Do you see those cannons? We don't have those ships. We don't have those cannons. They're technologically superior to us. So it's a matter of survival. So therefore, one of the captains of the ship, the story goes, he managed to sneak in and to smuggle in a smaller model of a locomotive, of a train. It was an actual small little tiny locomotive, but just really, really small. And he smuggled it in past the guards, past everyone, to the emperor. And he said, check this out. And the emperor, he fell in love with what he saw. Wow, this is a train? You mean it travels 10 times faster than horses? You mean I can unify my kingdom? I can travel from the north to the south in one day? We can make more money. We can do more. He was amazed. And he gave the command to open up the country to these Western people. So therefore, for the Western civilization, for the Western technology to come in, he had to do away with the old. And that was the carrying and wielding of swords and the abolishing of that class of warriors. But of course, those warriors, they said, no, we've lived like this for hundreds of years. We have our own culture. We don't need them. We don't need their technology. And they rebelled. So what did the government do? How many lessons can we take from this as Muslims today? They wanted to hold on to their old traditional values in spite of the modern day torrent. So they rebelled publicly and privately. So some of those sword-wielding warriors were forced to comply and they were forced to adjust. So some of them, they began hiding their swords inside of canes. And they would act like they were sick and ill and weak and beggars and priests. Obviously, this one has a bit more curvature. But there are many cane swords which are straight and they look just like a cane. So if I'm stopped, if I'm bothered, hey, swords are illegal. You cannot carry swords. We're a modern civilized nation. We have Western values. The old ways are outdated. They're barbaric. They belong in a museum. What are you doing carrying a sword? He said, it's not a sword. It's a cane. Can't you see? I have a bad back. It's a cane. And if and when he needed to pull out the sword for self-defense or offense, he would easily pull it out, put it back, and go back to being a beggar and a bum. Hence came the idea of the cane sword. So the cane sword is a trick and a ruse to hold on to the ancient culture without getting into trouble. Everybody understand this? And of course, as a Muslim, and we're going to speak about Imam al-Bukhari and the heroes of Islam, there are countless parallels that we can make and draw from this. So this is called a cane sword. I'm going to pull it out, inshallah. It's a live sword. It is actually sharp. It's not a toy. It isn't a prop, nor is it a gimmick. Bismillah. Okay? Beautiful. It's light, but at the same time has a good weight. And is a full tang sword. Those who know what that means, they know what that means. It's hand forged. It's quite sharp. It isn't a super fancy, expensive one. I'm not going to act like it is, but it's a real sword. All right? How to use it, why do I carry it, so on and so forth. We'll get there. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Inshallah. All right? Everybody got a good look at it? Tayyib? All right, let's move forward. Afterwards, this sword may look a little more familiar to you guys. Maybe something you've seen in a movie, a documentary, a Netflix series, right? Okay? This is a Mamluk sword. And it is a saber. And it is a one-handed sword. It isn't meant to be wielded with two hands, but only one. Okay? On horse, on foot, etc. It's a saber. And the saber is known to be curved. And subhanAllah, when you talk about history, east meets west. The curved saber versus the straight broadsword. And that represented the crescent moon and the crucifix. Once again, east meeting west, old and ancient meeting modern. A peaceful meeting or a violent clash. And the history of this country is no different. There were people living here for thousands, Allah knows best how many years. And there were those who came from Western countries. They met, they mixed, they matched. And we all know what happened afterwards. We are not relinquishing our religion and our culture. And those newcomers are saying, you must relinquish your old ways, your old culture, and your old religion. So therefore, this is a Mamluk sword. And of course, there's a very long discussion concerning the Mamluks and their history in Islam and what they did for Islam and what they did for the Muslims, saving Islam and saving the Muslims. And many of you, not all of you, are from countries and ethnicities that were once governed, ruled, conquered, saved by the Mamluks. Now, if you want to put this on pause and you want to talk about what's happening in Gaza, you want to talk about what's happening in the West Bank, you want to talk about what's happening in Lebanon and what has happened in Jordan and all of the Muslims being killed and slaughtered and massacred and the problems of the world today, then you must speak about the Mamluks, those who came before them and those who came after them. Many people think and feel that the Nakba began in 1948. And that is a gross mistake. That's wrong. The Nakba did not begin in 1948. It didn't begin in 1947. And the war against Palestine and the Muslims there, it began many years ago. Does anybody know? Anybody have an idea? I'll give a gift. Anybody have an idea? No. The Crusades, maybe not. But there's one person from the West. Who said that? There you go. Great job. You'll get a gift after the session. Napoleon. What did Napoleon do? When he went to Egypt and he went to Palestine, what did he say? What offer did he make? Anybody know? Anybody know? No. Napoleon, he called out to the Jews living in Jerusalem, living in Palestine, living in the lands of the Muslims had governed for years, for centuries, in harmony. They never had any problems. He said, revolt against these Muslim Arab leaders, and I will give you your own state and your own land. This was the very first Zionist idea planted, but it was subtle. And of course, many people that came afterwards and they built upon that idea. We're not here to talk about that right now. What's important is Napoleon, he traveled to Egypt. And of course, he considered the Egyptians to be backwards, to be savage, to be barbaric, to be outdated. But he admired many things about them. And from the things that he admired about that disastrous campaign were the Mamluks. And he liked them so much as that he had a personal guard of Mamluk soldiers that he took back to France. And of course, he got his swordsmiths to design swords based off of their sword production. And that is why U.S. Navy swords, U.S. Army swords, they all look like what type of swords? Middle Eastern swords. You ever look at the Marines? The swords that they hold, they look like Muslim Arabian swords. That's why. So therefore, this sword is considered to be a mixture of two worlds. Of the East, the Middle East. You can see here, France and the West. This is an officer's sword that's meant to drag on the ground. Arabian swords, Eastern swords, they don't have this little thingy here at the bottom because the swords are held higher up. So we have East and we have West. Who's going to win? Can there be harmony? Is Islam compatible for the West? Or is it just a Middle Eastern religion? Everybody on the same page or not? And the sword, no doubt, it represents many of these concepts. The quality, the craftsmanship, the beauty, the elegance, and of course, the danger. Handled properly versus mishandled and used improperly, aggressively. So these are different Islamic parallels that we can take from swords, that I myself have taken from swords. And it lies no doubt when we speak about Imam al-Bukhari being a hero of Islam, a scholar of Islam, and the other scholars of hadith that were heroes and warriors of Islam. We take these parallels. So with that being said, enough about swords. We're not here to talk about swords. Was Imam al-Bukhari a hero of Islam? Because when I think about a hero, the first thing I think about is someone physically a hero. Big and strong, chivalrous, courageous, selfless, with or without a cape, that rescues people and saves people and fights on the battlefield. But the Prophet ﷺ, he tells us, and the hadith is authentic, and Imam at-Tirmidhi's Jami' and other people of Sunan, Anas radiyallahu anhu narrated, Arhamu ummati bi ummati Abu Bakr, wa ashadduhum fi amri Allahi Umaru, wa asdaquhum hayan Uthmanu. وأعلمهم بالحلال والحرام معاذ بن جبل وأقرأهم أبي وأفرضهم زيد بن ثابت وأقرأهم أبي ولكل أمة أمين وأمين هذه الأمة أبو عبيدة بن الجراح وفي رواية وأقضاهم علي. The Messenger of Allah عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said, أرحم أمتي بأمتي أبو بكر. He said, from among my nation, the most tender, the softest, the most merciful to my nation, from my nation, is Abu Bakr. And the roughest, the toughest, the hardest, ashadduhum fi amrillah. When it came down to Allah's laws, Allah's rules, he who never played games, he didn't play around, he didn't smile too much, was Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. وَأَصْدَقُهُمْ حَيَاءً عُثْمَانُ. And the shyest, the meekest, the humblest, the most modest from my nation was Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu ta'ala anhu arda. He who had the most knowledge of fiqh, the rulings, the halal and the haram, is Mu'adh ibn Jabal. And the master of the rules of inheritance. A man dies, he has a wife, he has a son, he has a half-brother, he has a grandparent. Who gets what? His wealth, his estate, his will. He who knew these rules the best was Zayd ibn Thabit. And the best reciter, the sweetest voice, the best voice, the greatest memorizer of the Quran is Ubay ibn Ka'b. And for every single ummah, there is an ultimate trustee, Ameen. Someone who's extremely trustworthy. Someone that you can leave everything with him and he'll make sure that it's taken care of. And that man was Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah radiyallahu anhu ardah. Another version of this hadith states, وَأَقْضَاهُمْ عَلِي. And the best judge from my ummah, he who was most learned with regards to the judiciary issues and affairs of judging and ruling, was Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu ardah. So this sound hadith shows us, and it teaches us, is that the Sahaba had fields of expertise. They specialized in things. and they were unequal with regards to all of their strengths and all of their fields of expertise. When it came to mercy, no one is more merciful than Abu Bakr. And of course, Umar was merciful. Uthman was merciful. Ubay was merciful. Zayd ibn Thabit was merciful. But the most merciful is Abu Bakr. Abu Ubaid ibn al-Jarrah, what was he credited with? How many battles did he win? How many lanes did he open up? How many enemies did he humble? But the Prophet ﷺ said that he's Amin. So the moral of the story is a hero, as has been stated by the different speakers and by the different panelists. Heroes come in different shapes, sizes, forms, and figures. There are heroes on the battlefield. There are heroes in the office. There are heroes with regards to networking. There are heroes in knowledge and scholastics. And there are heroes on a lower, smaller, personal level. The son says to his father, "You're my hero, Abi. I look up to you. Not too many people know you. You don't have the fame. You don't have this, but to me, you're my hero." And most importantly is being a hero of yourself to yourself. Being a hero of yourself to yourself. You conquering your inner self, your inner ugliness that you know is ugly. And you having the guts, the courage to stand up to your nafs and to fight your nafs. And by Allah's permission, to defeat your bad, darker nafs. So there are levels of heroes. And there are types of heroes. And there are few from among the heroes of Islam, of past, and of present, and only Allah knows of the future. Only Allah knows who's going to be a hero tomorrow. And we need many, many heroes tomorrow. But we have to understand that the word hero or heroine is a wide word, a wide term. So there are heroes with their pens, and of course there are heroes with their swords. They work together, they contribute, and inshallah ta'ala, we will be in the winning column, and we'll stay out of the L column. So Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala was a hero of Islam, and if so, why and how? The answer is yes. But not just because he wrote this great book, Al-Jami' al-Sahih, Al-Musnad al-Mukhtasar, من حديث رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وسننه وأيامه. That's the proper title for his book. Imam al-Bukhari didn't call his book Sahih al-Bukhari. That's a colloquial term. Imam al-Bukhari's book is called Al-Jami' al-Sahih. And he considered his book to be summarized. Allahu Akbar. Think about that. He considered his work to be a brief work. Imam al-Bukhari's heroship goes above and beyond his scholarship. And that is something by Allah Azza wa Jalla's permission that I want to read to you with regards to his life and some of the turbulence that Imam al-Bukhari faced and some of the trials and the tribulations that Imam al-Bukhari faced. And before he faced these trials towards the end of his life, we know that Imam al-Bukhari was an orphan. His father was a great scholar, and his father died when he was very young. So not having your father in your life is tough enough. And we all know not having your father will make you or break you. Don't ever forget these words. Not having your father in your life can make you a great person. You can achieve much, or it can break you in half. And of course, we're not here to talk about divorce and the social domestic issues that we suffer from. But for sure, the shaitan, he wants the people to be separated and divided. And he wants the ex-wife to tell her children, you don't need your father. I love you. I care for you. I pay the bills. I'm your mother and your father. And that is extremely evil, negative, and it's wrong. Both parents are needed for the boy and the girl. Both parents. So Imam al-Bukhari, the first challenge that he faced is that he didn't have his father as he grew up. Number two, Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala, and of course the scholars, they differ on what was Imam al-Bukhari's ethnicity. هل كان عربي الأصل ولا فارسي الأصل ولا تركي الأصل? What was his stock? his ethnic stock, his blood. And we all know that we are obsessed with blood and ethnicity, unfortunately. We're obsessed with a person's lineage more than a person's character and how a person behaves and how a person acts. So some say that his great-great-grandfather was Arabian. Another say he was Persian. And some say that Imam al-Bukhari came from Turkish origin. Turkish origin. What's important is him entering the world of Islamic scholarship, which, whether you like it or not, is going to be dominated and oftentimes monopolized by people of Arabian ancestry. They have an advantage, whether you like it or not. It's their language. Hadiths are understood in their culture. The most sacred sites of Islam are in their lands. So as a non-Arabic person, non-Arabian person, I'm automatically beginning my studies at a what? A disadvantage. And that can either make you or break you. The third disadvantage of Imam al-Bukhari and manifestation of his courage is that Imam al-Bukhari was extremely talented at such a young, tender age. Imam al-Bukhari wrote one of his best books when he was 18 years old, At-Tarikh al-Kabir. He was 18 years. What is my 18-year-old doing right now? What is your 18-year-old daughter doing right now? And he wrote a great book on one of the most difficult sciences of Islam. So these are three early challenges, i.e., there will be those who would feel inferior, and there will be those who will be scared and afraid of Imam al-Bukhari's raw talent. And the fourth problem with Imam al-Bukhari was that Imam al-Bukhari wasn't a punk. He wasn't scared. He wasn't afraid. In Imam al-Bukhari, he met so many great mountains of knowledge, mountains. And do you know what he said about all of them? He said, "Mastasghartu nafsi inda ahadin illa inda Ali." Imam Ahmed, this one, that one, all of those great ulama, I never felt that I was weaker or lesser to any of them except for Ali ibn al-Madini, one of his main teachers. Think about that statement now. So he has confidence now. One may say borderline arrogance. He's cocky. He knows that he has it. And we all know how insecure we are as human beings. Someone is younger than me, faster than me, stronger than me, prettier than me, more handsome than me, and we feel insecure. And we have to throw our insecurities on the next individual by talking about them and scandalizing them and shaming them and plotting against them because you're better than me and you're younger than me. So Imam al-Bukhari, he faced a lot of turbulence at a young age. What we're going to read with the time that we have is something from his biography, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, with regards to things that took place towards the end of his life. All right? And this great Imam, of course, Allah had honored him, but he died, one can say from a worldly standard, shamelessly. Imam al-Bukhari didn't die in a palace. He didn't die with people around him. He didn't die in the company of his disciples. He didn't die in a warm, comfortable bed. He died in outward, I quote, shame and disgrace. And some narrations say that he had his turban and that was it. That's what he died with, nothing else. How did this take place? Why did Imam al-Bukhari die in such a manner? Don't you know, before we read this briefly, there was a great Imam of Hadith. If my bad memory serves me correctly, it was Abu Zur'a al-Razi, rahimahullah, who was a contemporary of Imam al-Bukhari. He got sick. And he got very sick. He became very ill. And he was overtaken by a great fever, and he was upon his deathbed. So some of his disciples, who were scholars themselves, they heard of his sickness, and they said, let's go visit Abu Zur'a al-Razi. Let's go visit him. So as they visited him, asked how he was doing, how he was feeling, they could clearly see he was sick and that he was dying. And they wanted to implement the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ statement, laqinu mawtakum la ilaha illallah. When you visit someone who's dying, get them to say the kalima of Tawheed. But they were shy and they were embarrassed. This great man is sick and he's old and he's aging. So they figured out what they could do to get him to make the kalima without being direct and without being blunt. So they said, Sheikh, can we read some hadiths to you? Can we review some hadiths with you? He said, go ahead. And he's dying. So one man, he says, حدثنا فلان, قال حدثني فلان, قال أخبرني فلان. So-and-so said, so-and-so said. And then he couldn't, he stopped. He stuttered, he forgot the narration. And then another man said, حدثني فلان, فلان reported. And then he stuttered. And then a third and a fourth. And then Abu Zur'a, as he was dying, he said, perhaps you mean this hadith. حدثنا فلان أخبرنا قال رسول الله من قال لا إله إلا الله من كان آخر كلامه لا. And he died on the hadith that said whoever's last statement is La ilaha illallah will go to paradise. And he passed away just like that. Can you imagine this now? Imam al-Bukhari didn't die like this. He was outcasted. People made a great scandal about him, but he didn't quit and he didn't give up. So no doubt, Imam al-Bukhari being a hero of Islam is bigger and greater than Sahih al-Bukhari. Khairan inshallah. Let's go up to the top of the page and read this briefly before we stop. All right, Bismillah. This is from online. Obviously, I don't have the book here. قال الحاكم أبو عبد الله سمعت محمد بن حامد البزاز قال سمعت الحسن محمد بن جابر يقول سمعت محمد بن يحيى قال لما ورد محمد بن إسماعيل البخاري نيسابور اذهبوا إلى هذا الرجل الصالح فاسمعوا منه فذهب الناس إليه وأقبلوا على السماع منه حتى ظهر الخلل في مجلس محمد بن يحيى فحسده بعد ذلك وتكلم فيه. Listen to what Bukhari's life, how it ended. Imam al-Bukhari, he went to a city called Nishapur, where Imam Muslim is from, in Central Asia. So there was a great hadith master there whose name was Muhammad ibn Yahya al-Dhuhli. And FYI, he was the teacher of Imam al-Bukhari. Imam al-Bukhari was his student, but he had graduated. He was, a master in his own. So Imam Muhammad ibn Yahya, he told his friends, his students, those in his circle, go to this, listen to these words. اذهبوا إلى هذا الرجل الصالح. Go to this righteous man. He's righteous. And listen to what he has to tell you. Learn from him. So the people, they went to Bukhari's majlis, who was far younger than this man, and he was his student. And they fell in love with Bukhari. They fell in love with his character. They fell in love with his knowledge. حتى ظهر الخلل. Until his circle got smaller and leaner. I.e., the people that would sit with him and study with him were now sitting and studying with Bukhari. So this great Imam, this great scholar of Islam, he became envious. He became jealous. He became insecure and he felt inferior. How was my student taking away my shine? I taught you, I raised you. Now you're stealing my fans? They were my fans first. وَتَكَلَّمَ فِيهِ. And that's when he made the great scandal about Imam al-Bukhari. That Imam al-Bukhari is saying this regarding the Quran. And he's saying this concerning Allah's attributes. And he's saying this concerning lafdi bil Qur'ani makhluq. Lafdi bil Qur'ani makhluq. And he got all of the people to gather up and rise up against al-Bukhari until they criticized him and accused him as being a heretic, as being an innovator. And Muhammad ibn Yahya al-Dhuhli, rahimahullah ta'ala, he was the main figure in Nishapur. Imam al-Bukhari, he wanted to leave. And the only person that stood with Bukhari was his friend and his student, Imam Muslim. And Imam Muslim, he took all of the hadiths that he took from this great man and he said, take them. I don't want anything from you. Keep your ijazah. It means nothing to me. You're talking about my friend. And Imam Muslim stood by Imam al-Bukhari, and Imam al-Bukhari sought refuge in a city called Khartang. He left Nishapur to go to Khartang. And when he got to Khartang, guess who was the governor of that city? Muhammad ibn Yahya's brother. So he was trapped. He ran from his harm to a city of the same line. And he made the same scandal about him. And he kicked him out. He outcasted Imam al-Bukhari and he died pretty much on the road. And all he had was his turban. That's it. He had no books. He had no students. He had no ceremonial, heroic ending, making the hadith before he died. That great hero of Islam. But Imam al-Bukhari was a believer in death before dishonor. Death before dishonor. I didn't say this. That's a lie. That's a scandal, and I'm not going to feed into your envy and your jealousy. If kicking me out, taking away everything that you have from me, taking me from my students, taking me from my library, if that's what it is, I'd rather die with my honor and my pride. And that is the true definition of a hero. A hero who believes in death before dishonor. I'll never shame myself and relinquish my religion no matter what you physically do to me. Closing remarks. The hadith that I mentioned and gave to you is very clear. Is that there are different types of heroes and there are different levels of heroes, right? The hero is only a hero because what's on the inside reaches the surface and it manifests itself on the outside. Sacrifice, selflessness, death before dishonor. No amount of money that you can offer me can buy me and buy my values. And we learned this from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when they offered him money to be quiet. Just please stop. You're disturbing us and our culture and our religion and our political hierarchy. If you want to worship one God, that's fine, but please be quiet. Stay private, stay silent. We'll give you whatever you want. You want power, you want money, you want women, we'll give you everything, but please be quiet. And we all know what the Prophet did and didn't do. The Sahaba, radiallahu ta'ala anhum, they were offered money. People attempted to buy them out, to bribe them. And from them is the sword of Allah. Once again, Khalid ibn al-Walid, radiallahu anhu, wardah, at that epic battle of Yarmouk, when he met the emissary, he met the delegate, he met the representatives of the Byzantine Empire. Why have you come? You Arabs have come from the desert on your horses and on your camels. What do you want? You want gold? You want silver? Please leave our lands. Get off of our borders. Go back to the desert. We'll give you what you want. You want clothes? You want sheep? You want cow? We'll give you whatever wealth you want. Just leave. Go away. So this emissary, he thought that these were just some raiders coming to plunder, pillage, and then run back into the desert. He was sadly mistaken. He told Khalid, we're willing to make a settlement. We don't have to fight, which clearly proved that he was already afraid of Khalid and the Sahaba. And he already felt the danger of losing. No one negotiates unnecessarily unless they know they have the weaker hand. Don't ever forget that. If you're negotiating when you don't have to, that proves that there's a chance of you losing. So we'll pay you, we'll give you whatever money, just leave our lands, please. Khalid radiallahu anhu, he said, no, you got it all wrong. You got the wrong guy. That's not me, that's not us. So then the emissary, the delegate, he got a little more aggressive. And he said, indeed, men who are better than you have come to fight us and they have lost. Men that were bigger, stronger, more disciplined, more well-prepared than you are, they have come to fight us for Syria and they've lost. Khalid radiallahu anhu, he responded by saying one thing to the man. He said, Ji'tuka birijalin al-mawtu ahabu ilayhim min al-hayat. He says, I have brought you, O noble, O royal, O delegate, O high person. Ji'tuka, I've brought you as a gift. Men who love death more than life. These are our terms. You accept them, submit, surrender. If not, I'll see you in the battlefield. End of discussion. So he wasn't sold out. He didn't allow himself to be bought out. And we know that Yarmouk was one of the greatest turning points in the early Islamic conquests of the Rashidun Caliphate. So the moral of the story is the hero begins with values. And those values are translated upon his tongue, his hands, with or without a sword, a pen, a briefcase, etc. So we have to raise our children with the proper values. And then bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, the limbs, the crude flesh is easy and simple afterwards. Wallahu ta'ala alam, jazakumullahu khairan.